Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Delos Santos. Here are today's top stories. Foreign direct investment inflows plunged to a 14-month low in July as investors remain cautious over persisting inflation and a global slowdown.
Now, after a series of rollbacks, a big-time oil price hike takes effect today. Meanwhile, the Energy Department warns of a potential tight power supply in the first few months of next year.
An association of POGO operators and service providers claim that more than 23,000 Filipinos would lose their jobs if the government enforces a total ban on offshore gaming operations.
And the Transportation Department says at least 9 airport projects with an aggregate value of almost 1 trillion pesos are slated for completion next year. Let's begin our broadcast with foreign direct investment inflows slumping to a 14-month low in the month of July. Now, data from the Bangko Sentral showed that FDI net inflows tanked by more than 64% to $460 million in July on a year-to-year basis. Now, month-on-month, FDI inflows fell by more than 2%. The Bangko Sentral said the decrease in inflows were mainly due to lower investments of non-residents in debt instruments of their local affiliates. Economists said the latest FDI data reflected worries over an expected global recession, as well as domestic issues such as elevated inflation.
Congressional leaders vow to approve at least 30 bills that have been identified as priority measures of the Marcos administration. The priority bills were tackled during the first meeting of the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC, under the Marcos Jr. presidency. The 20-member LEDAC listed 32 bills under the Common Legislative Agenda, 20 of which are priority measures mentioned during the President's SONA. Marcos's priority bills include the National Government's Right-Sizing Program, the Real Property Valuation Bill, the E-Governance Act, and the Internet Transaction Act. Also included in the list are the Retirement and Pension Bill, Department of Water Resources Bill, Budget Modernization Bill, and the Natural Defense Act. Lawmakers have agreed to approve 6 of Marcos's priority measures by year-end. These include amendments to the Build, Operate, and Transfer Law, the mandatory ROTC and NSTP program, and the bill establishing a Virology Science and Technology Institute. The other measures are flashed on your screens. Meanwhile, the House and Senate have also enumerated their priority measures during the LEDAC meeting. These include the bill establishing regional specialty hospitals, the new Philippine Passport Act, and Magna Carta for barangay health workers. The rest of lawmakers' priority bills are flashed on your screens.
Now, with thinner power reserves seen for 2023, the Energy Department is turning to natural gas to support the country's power supply.
But for the meantime, households in Metro Manila and nearby provinces can expect lower electricity bills this month as Meralco reduces rates for October. Shaila Francisco with the report.
We're still a few months away from ringing in 2023, but as early as now, the Energy Department already warns of tight power supply for next year, especially during the dry or summer months. The DOE issued this projection on the assumption that the 1,200 megawatt Ilian gas-fired plant will still remain not operational by 2023.
It shows several yellow alerts and the possibility of red alerts in 2023. The capacity usually falls in May and June because, of course, our hydros in Luzon are unable to deliver at this particular point. These are the ones that we are attending to with a sense of urgency, and which is to plan for how to bridge this particular gap.
The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines raises yellow alert to indicate that the grid has thin power reserves. Red alert, meanwhile, signals insufficient electricity supply, which could result in outages. To prevent this, the DOE is banking on natural gas facilities to boost supply and the use of more renewable energy supply. Meralco, for its part, is also preparing in case power firms under San Miguel Corporation decide to terminate its power supply deals, which could worsen supply woes. This comes after the Energy Regulatory Commission rejected the request of South Premier Power Corporation and San Miguel Energy Corporation, as well as Meralco, to temporarily hike their power rates in a bid to recover a portion of their losses amid surging petroleum prices.
And the commitment is to continue supplying us under protest. Now, very difficult to really speculate on what will transpire next. But in any eventuality, as we have mentioned in the past, we are preparing for that kind of a scenario by entering into emergency power supply agreements. At the same time, if need be, to supply our more than 7 million customers, because obviously, we cannot disrupt service.
In the meantime, the power distributor is rolling back its power rate by 7 centavos per kilowatt hour this month, on the back of lower generation charges and lower feed-in tariff allowance. A household consuming 500 kilowatt hours can see a reduction of 37 pesos in their power bills.
Meralco has managed to lower the cost of electricity over the years. While other commodities have risen, at least on the part of Meralco, we've made that effort. And this is really part of our sourcing strategy and the contracts we've entered into to shield consumers from any price spikes and to ensure that we are getting the best deal for them.
Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
Meanwhile, oil companies are breaking a series of rollbacks with a big-time price hike on pump prices. Diesel will see the biggest increase at 6 pesos and 85 centavos per liter. That's effective today, October 11. Gasoline prices, on the other hand, will climb by 1 peso and 20 centavos per liter. Meanwhile, pump stations that sell kerosene will implement a price hike of 3 pesos and 50 centavos per liter. The increase in prices comes as the OPEC Plus announced plans to cut its production by 2 million barrels per day. Now, with price hikes seen to persist in the coming weeks, transport groups are calling on the government to lower the excise tax on fuel. However, the Bangko Sentral cautions against this, saying tax cuts on oil would affect the peso's value as well as the country's capacity to service its debt.
Now, fresh trade data from the Philippine Statistics Authority coming in. Exports for the month of August fell 2% to $6.4 billion. This came from a contraction of 4.1% in July. Now, the figure is also better than Bloomberg's negative 4.4% estimate for August. Imports, on the other hand, grew by 26%, beating the 22% estimate by Bloomberg. This brought the trade deficit to $6 billion, an annual growth of 81%. All right, lots of data and matters to digest, from trade data to FDIs. Now, to help us make sense of all of these, we have Ronilo Balbieran, economist from the University of Asia and the Pacific. Prof, thank you for joining us. Now, again, let's kick things off with FDIs here. On one hand, you have, again, the president securing 1 trillion peso worth of investments overseas, but that has yet to translate when it comes to FDIs, 14-month lows here. I mean, given, of course, the latest data that we have are still back from July, but how optimistic should we be that we might actually see an uptick in inflows amid the global recession?
We should be very optimistic because, number one, our labor employment data shows that we have actually been gaining a lot of additional employment over the last 4 months. So the most recent report as of August labor force survey, so we have actually registered almost another 500,000 additional employment. So that would mean we are already over the last 4 months from August back we are already registering more than 2.2 million additional jobs, absolute jobs. So whereas unemployment is reported to go up a little bit by 0.1%, it is somehow a quote-unquote joke, because the absolute numbers are actually registering very high. So this means that our domestic demand is very, very strong, and therefore the investors are just waiting for the inflation to normalize. And then once the inflation data is normalized, then we can expect all these investors from abroad coming into the Philippines.
Okay. Prof, can you comment on the trade data that just came out at 9 in the morning? Why is it that our exports are still in contraction mode, albeit of course lower than what was expected, especially since the peso's depreciation is supposed to benefit the sector, and also what is happening with the higher than expected imports?
Well, number one, it was forecasted that it should be more than -4%. So we more or less we are somehow happy with a -2% performance of exports. That's more than expected. But at the same time, I think if you're a manufacturer/exporter, it will take you time for you to actually repurpose or expand your production capacity and production numbers for you to absorb these depreciation levels. So the question for you as an exporter is, will this higher exchange rate environment persist over the next 6 months so that you will be able to plan your production appropriately? So I think with that, we can see at least another 2 to 3 months for our exporters to actually feel that particular confidence that they will be able to export more with a higher exchange rate. So I think those are good signs, those small, but those are better signs for our exports to perform better, especially that we are now facing the holiday seasons.
Sir, in terms of the trade deficit, which has ballooned and it's higher than expected, and also the imports, does this show signs of growth, capital formation? Are we using the imports to actually have investments here? Or is this worrying for you because this might just be linked again to oil prices, agricultural commodities?
Definitely, this is a sign. Remember that we had a ballooning trade deficit during the Build program. So this is already a manifestation that once again, the Build, now a Build Better More program is now kicking in. And so more or less, we are importing a lot of these construction materials, and that's why construction materials prices are actually at its all-time high. And all these imports of capital equipment, of course, our general population is actually importing more because of higher labor data, and therefore they have income, and that they can actually buy more imported items. And that's why from the point of view of the exchange rate is reflecting this. So we are demanding more dollars, and therefore exchange rate is also going up. But as the exchange rate corrects in this particular situation, so we can have an equilibrium between exports and imports.
Okay, given that, more on that point, Prof, how do you see the peso at least performing in the near term? Should we be bracing now for a $60 to $8 level sooner rather than later?
Most probably, So since the inflation environment in the U.S. is still not normalizing, but it's slowing down, but it's still at very elevated levels, and so therefore we can very much anticipate an exchange rate that is more than 60, also in light of a very, very high trade deficit. So this particular exchange rate increase or a depreciation is a long time awaited correction because of our trade deficit. It should have happened a long time ago.
Okay, and in terms of that, how long is this inflationary environment set to persist? We had, again, another oil price hike after a series of rollbacks. And even the prices of oil back to jumping because of the OPEC plus cuts. How much worse is it going to get, Prof?
We cannot see an inflation going to 5% by the end of the year. No, so we can only expect it towards the middle of the first quarter next year in terms of our inflation going back to 5% and below. So that particular inflation numbers will remain above 5% towards over the next 5 to 6 months. But in a way, that is also being caused not just by oil, but actually a strong rebound of our economy, as we can see from the labor numbers, from the purchase managers index numbers. So our manufacturing is also performing very, very strongly. Our trade, tourism, and transport and logistics are also performing very strong. And therefore, this will produce an elevated demand environment that will further contribute to the demand push of our inflation.
Okay, again, you said you're expecting a bit of a tempering at least in the first quarter of next year, but we have now more problems here, the DOE warning of power shortages. How will this further compound our problem?
So we hope these positive signs as early as now are enough signals for entrepreneurs out there who would want to venture into producing more energy, whether it's renewable or non-renewable. So we welcome those particular registration of potential power investments in our Board of Investments. And so we are hoping and we're praying that our Filipino entrepreneurs will take advantage of these incentives, and also our forecast of a huge recovery of our economy. And so let's take advantage of these particular signs of strong economic growth so that we will have more power, especially for 2023.
Okay, Prof, finally, before we let you go, quick assessment of the President's first 100 days in office in terms of tackling these two issues, no, the inflation and the agricultural food shortage, and on the back of that LEDAC meeting, sir.
Well, we're very happy that the President focused on e-government, e-governance, Internet Transaction Act. So these are very important components of the new normal. So we have to make sure that we take advantage, we leverage on these developments, and we have to modernize our government to be able to respond to the opportunities of the digital economy. And we welcome the signing of the SIM Act, and that will therefore provide more confidence, more faith of our businessmen and our consumers in the e-commerce. And so these digital economy, coupled with the BOT law amendment promise of the President, as well as the recently approved revision of the BOT law IRR, the implementing rules and regulation, and that those are strong signals that the President is committed to make sure that we leverage on two things. One, on private sector resources and expertise, and number two, on the power of the internet economy.
All right. Thank you so much for that update. That was, of course, Professor Ronilo Balbieran, economist over at the University of Asia and the Pacific. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. An association of POGO operators and service providers cautions the government against a total ban on the industry.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
Tech scams could soon be a thing of the past as the SIM card registration is finally signed into law. Maricel Halili with the details.
The SIM card registration bill has been signed into law. This aims to address the proliferation of spam text messages and scammers.
We will soon be able to provide law enforcement agencies the tools needed to resolve crimes perpetrated with the use of these SIM cards, as well as providing a strong deterrence against the commission of wrongdoing.
Under the said law, all SIM cards, whether prepaid or postpaid, must be registered.
I think the prescribed time has still to be set by NTC and with the consultation with the telcos. I say they have to prepare their systems, they have to prepare their people in order to do this.
Consumers are also required to present valid IDs to direct sellers upon purchase of a new SIM card. Telcos are also directed to maintain a registration record of their subscribers. That's on top of submitting a list of authorized agents to the NTC, which must also be updated quarterly. Anyone who fails to comply with the rules will have their SIM cards deactivated, while those who will use false information in registering their SIM card will be penalized. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Now, legitimate POGO operators warn that more than 20,000 Filipinos are set to lose their jobs should the government shut down offshore gaming entirely. According to the Association of Service Providers of POGOs, or ASPAP, there are 23,000 Filipinos working in PAGCOR licensed companies. That is higher than the 17,000 foreign workers employed under the same. Now, with more Filipinos at a disadvantage, ASPAP calls on the government to focus on POGOs that engage in illegal activities. This as some senators consider banning offshore gaming altogether due to the rising number of crimes associated with them.
Yung kidnapping kasi, kaya nga nung kanina nagsasalita ako about social ills kasi hindi lang naman siya sa isang industry lang, sa lahat. So we don't want to blame the government, the police enforcers on how they should do their job. But since the time that Senator Bato mentioned it nung nag-conduct siya ng sarili niya Senate hearing, it was addressed. See? Diba? Gumalaw silang lahat at diba, nawala yung problema.
Now, while the government debates on the shutdown of POGO operations, the Justice Department says it will continue to go after the illegal activities in the industry.
Well, the directive that the Secretary gave was to crack down on the illegal POGO companies. And sa tingin ho namin, yung policy direction as to whether to ban the whole industry or not is something that's above our pay grade. Dapat i-discuss yan sa higher level.
The Transportation Department says at least 9 airport projects, including new builds and upgrades, are due to be completed next year. The 9 construction and upgrade projects include the Tuguegarao Airport, San Vicente Airport, Tacloban Airport, and Bacolod Silay Airport. Also on the list are the Catbalogan Airport, Davao International Airport, Emlang Airport, Sanga-Sanga Airport, and Ozamis Airport. The DOTR says these airport projects have a combined value of nearly 1 trillion pesos. Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista said the Antique Airport is also set to be completed next year.
Japanese gaming tycoon Kazuo Okada remains confident that he will regain control of Okada Manila despite the grave coercion charges filed against him.
Now, Okada's team is also confident that the indictment of Kazuo and his team has no legal basis. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez has a story.
A wild stretch of imagination. Japanese gaming tycoon Kazuo Okada had this to say about the grave coercion charges filed by Universal Entertainment Corporation, Director Hajime Tokuda, and his allies. This is regarding the ownership dispute over the multi-billion-dollar Okada Manila Casino. In a briefing led by Attorney Rico Quicho, Okada's newly appointed spokesman, he said the Department of Justice's indictment of Kazuo and his team has no legal basis.
The resolution of the Department of Justice recommending the filing of grave coercion against the Kazuo Okada Group is totally bereft of any merit. The Kazuo Okada Group remains unfazed. Amidst this minor setback, we are optimistic that in the next few days or months, we will ferret out the truth.
The DOJ recently recommended the filing of charges following their forceful takeover of the casino hotel last May 2022. This is due to the status quo ante order issued by the Supreme Court. This temporarily brought Kazuo back as chairman of Okada Manila's operator and its parent company Tiger Resort Leisure and Entertainment and the UEC. However, the decision was overturned.
The resolution of the DOJ has overstepped the authority directed by the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court has been very clear. It has been very unequivocal that the status quo ante order remains. It is only the Court of Appeals that has the authority to gather evidence insofar as the facts of the pending case is concerned.
Kazuo's camp is confident this will be reversed. For one, all 6 criminal cases filed against the top officials of Kazuo's party were dismissed. These include complaints of kidnapping and serious illegal detention, unjust vexation, and slight physical injuries due to lack of evidence. Meanwhile, Kazuo Okada remains optimistic that he would regain control of his company and continue what he had started in the Philippines.
Mr. Kazuo Okada means business. It was Mr. Kazuo Okada who built Okada Manila. And he is hell-bent of continuing and making sure that his vision with his investments to the Philippines will continue to grow.
Kazuo was ousted as the chairman of the casino's holding company back in 2017 due to claims he had defrauded the company. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
And we're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. Now, Dan, POGOs fleeing may leave a bitter taste for the office sector. And to that, of course, the extension of work from home arrangements, but Licho Property seems to still be optimistic.
Exactly. What they're saying is that despite the fact that they've been allowed, the BPO sector has been allowed, of course, to do work from home, the growth in it will still improve office demand. That's basically what they've said. And in the terms of the POGOs, this according to David Lichu, contractions appear to have leveled off. It feels like we are back to 2016 before those POGOs came to play. Now, nevertheless, vacancies across Metro Manila are still at 18%, but they are looking at a 27% higher full year figure compared to 2021, at least year to date. In 2022, it's already 27% higher in terms of office take-up. So, improvement there. And if you take a look at the property index, we're up by 0.7% this morning. Now, just before we end the broadcast, just a quick check on the peso here on that higher than expected deficit. I have to say it's just broken through 59. Yet again, we did have economist Ronilo Balbieran of UA&P saying that it's likely to be above 60. So brace for that in the near term. And finally, how are we doing in terms of the local bourse? Also a bump up actually, I mean, compared to the peso, going the opposite way, up by 0.9% the past 3 days, up by 0.8% today, firming up above 5,800 levels.
Okay, starting the day at 59, let's see how we end. And that's it for today, October 11, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.